HeartProfit is an organization that is leading a movement of change to change the way we do business, create more compassion into our workplaces, to create mental well-being for all of our people, including ourselves as leaders. So we believe that we can have performance and compassion in our workplaces, and we feel like we absolutely need that in the world in which we live today. Today is a very personal and special episode for me because we are bringing on a leader that I met because of my sister. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about how Griselda and I met, and then I'm going to do an introduction, and then we'll go into a conversation. This is just going to be a real raw conversation, and I have no idea what it's going to be about, honestly, but we're going to be talking about compassionate leadership. So a little bit of background with my sister. My sister was an amazing individual. We lost her in January, unfortunately, of this year. She was an amazing individual. She was the valedictorian of her class as a senior in high school. She had just had incredible potential, never had an enemy, only spoke positive about everybody, and was just a really good-hearted person. There were people at her funeral from her school, which was in Texas, and her funeral was in California. But people drove out because they remember her being such a kind person. And it was so rare to have somebody that kind. But unfortunately, my sister had a slew of bad situations. She got pregnant really shortly after high school by a man who abused her. And then she had another abusive relationship, and then another abusive relationship. So she got beat down literally and figuratively over the course of her life. She started turning to substances, and she started becoming addicted to alcohol, and that became a real issue for her. And so she struggled. She struggled a lot. She struggled with alcoholism. I think at one point she kind of gave up and just, surrendered into the alcoholism. And it was very sad for all of us to watch. She went into the hospital at one point, and we thought we were going to lose her, and she recovered. It was shortly after that she decided that she wanted to have a little bit of a different life. She got a job, did okay. She was still struggling quite a bit. And then all of a sudden she got this boss that was like this new boss that really believed in her. We didn't know the impact that it would have, but over the course of the next year working under this boss, she grew tremendously. She got hope, that the spark in her eye came back, and she started feeling good about herself. She started looking forward to going to work every day. She started really taking pride in the work that she was doing, which wasn't happening before that. And so she quit drinking. She started taking care of herself. She started fixing herself up for work, and really looking forward to that. That work was a really highlight for her in her life at that point in time. And she was single at the time, single mom. Her youngest of 5 was still living with her. She was just like, this year of her life was a bright spot. And we all felt so much hope and happiness and joy about, how she was. And then I think it was about a year. I don't know the exact time frame. She got a new boss. The new boss was the old style of management, which was command and control, and look for where she's messing up and write her up and give her reprimand and all of those things. And it was really fear-based and control-based. And I literally watched my sister go from this high point into a nosedive. And she started drinking again. She started not caring about her work. She started not caring about herself. And eventually she did end up losing her job, and really just went downhill from there. And then, like I said, in January of this year, we lost her. She passed away from pneumonia, but it was complications of the alcoholism because she didn't get the help she needed when she was sick. She waited until it was way too late, and the ambulance had to be called to take her in. So I went to, when we were at the funeral, there was the point in time in the funeral where everybody got to stand up and tell stories about my sister. And the officiant actually had to cut people off. There were so many people that wanted to stand up and tell stories about what a wonderful person she was. And it was just so touching. And in the very back, there were 3 ladies that were in the very back. And one of them stood up and said, I worked with her. She was my boss. And I loved, going into her office because she cared about me and we were connected. And there were times that, we had our weekly meeting. I would go in her office and she said, well, I don't have anything to reprimand you on today. So let's talk about our grandkids. And she would show pictures of her grandkids and ask, the person to show her pictures of her. So there was a lot of connection going on there. It was beautiful, beautiful. So at the the funeral ended, and then we went over for the reception, and we were at the reception. I walked up to these three ladies and I said, thanks for coming. And I really want to tell you that there was this one boss, and I don't know who she was, but when my sister worked for her, when she was my sister's boss, my sister was a different person, completely different person. And I started telling them the story. And two of the women looked at the third woman and pointed to her, and she said, this is her. This was the boss. And I literally just tears just started pouring out of my eyes. And I was just so incredibly grateful that she was there at the funeral. I mean, they hadn't worked together in a couple of years. I just immediately fell in love with this woman, and I was so thankful to meet her. And I said, you know what, you have to come on my podcast. You have to come talk about what we're talking about, HeartProfit, because it is such this is the epitome of why I started HeartProfit and why I want HeartProfit to thrive and succeed, is because I know that leaders can make a difference in their people's lives. Leaders can make all the difference in a person's life and in their mental health and mental well-being. And being that we have a mental health crisis, I mean, addiction and alcoholism, addiction is the number one killer of people ages 15 to 55. Number one. Like, it wasn't even in the top 20 years ago. And so we have a big problem going on, and we've got to solve it in a new way. The way we've been doing it is not working. So when I said, you have to be on my podcast, she was like, absolutely, I will come speak on your podcast. We didn't even have the podcast at the time. She's the one that I got to witness her leadership style in action with my sister. And so I'm very grateful for her to be here. Thank you, Griselda, for logging on so early in the morning. Griselda's in California. I'm in Texas. Of course, Gloria is here with me. Gloria is my cohort with the HeartProfit learning and certification process. So Griselda, with all that being said, I just want to first of all, thank you for the impact that you made on my sister's life. And thank you for showing me firsthand on such a deep level the impact that a leader can have in her people. And so, y'all, I haven't talked to Griselda since the funeral. Like, this is all organic. And I just want to pull out of her this innate wisdom that she has and that she holds and that she brings into everything she does. Can you walk us through how you met and came to work with my sister and what stood out to you about her?
So I met your sister in 2018. By then, I had probably 6 years of leadership in different roles. I was newly promoted to program manager, which is a step after a supervisor. She worked for a call center. A call center is a fast-paced job. It was a division of over 40 employees. That's how I met her. The first thing I started doing as a new manager was I knew the importance of connecting with people. In those connections and my one-on-ones that I would have with everybody, and mind you, there are over 40 people, but I made it an effort to meet with every single one, because at that point in time, I was everybody's boss. There was no supervisor in place at that time, so I had to be everybody's boss. They had 2 teams with no supervisors, so I had to fill in for 40 staff, so I was their direct boss. So that didn't scare me. I said, I'm going to make time for everybody. So I would start calling in everybody. In those conversations and one-on-ones, I met your sister. And when I met her, she was the kindest. Like you said, she's is not just to say that she's kind, it's truly because she was a very compassionate, kind-hearted person. And that's how I got to know her in those interactions.
What stood out to you about her?
Her skill sets as an employee, she was very respectful. She was very compassionate, kind. Her job really mattered to her. I know that some people might show up to work for a paycheck. The way I perceive my interactions with her and the way she would treat customers, internally and external customers, is that she really did care about people. If she was a people person, even though she was not very outgoing, like very boastful and arrogant or anything like that, she was a quiet person, but she cared about others. And that's what captured me about her, because as leaders, you're supposed to plan for succession planning. You're supposed to encourage staff to take opportunities when they show up in the workplace. When you see people that are naturally humanistic in their approach with others, that's what you want in your leadership roles. And so that's what really captured me about her. And I loved it because who doesn't want people like that? Those are the best type of leaders because any skill sets you can learn. If you don't know how to use a spreadsheet, you can learn. If you don't know how to write reports, you can learn it. But compassion and kindness, that takes a lot of skill sets and it comes from the heart and your soul to be that type of person. On the other hand, what I did notice is that she had a lot of insecurities. So although she had all these magnificent traits, she also had insecurities. And at first, I didn't quite understand it until I started to get to know her more. But that was why interactions are so important because you start knowing more about a person that I don't see them as people that work for me, is people that are my colleagues. The type of leadership that I strive to be is a humble leader that shows empathy. In that, I started learning and getting to know her more, and my humility tells me they're your equals. Without your people, you're not going to ever meet any results. They're the ones that are going to be doing the work, not you. Your job is to coach them, to guide them, to help them grow and provide them the resources necessary so that they're successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what humble leadership is. I don't know it all, but guess what? We're going to work together and we're going to figure it out. So that was my approach with her. You might have insecurities, but guess what? I'm going to be here to help you and we're going to figure this out together.
Yeah. So you actually moved her into a leadership position.
Absolutely. So in the conversations we had, I said, can we think about the future? She was very hesitant. Like, I don't think I can ever be in a leadership role here. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about call center. I mean, who works in a call center? I mean, who can I even talk to that can help guide me in that? I said, I believe in you. I know you have the skill sets. And I outlined to her, you have compassion, you have the willingness to learn, you're coachable. That's key. She's
Mm-hmm.
coachable. And if you're coachable, the world is yours. You can learn and grow. And if people are there to support you, then don't be scared. Take that leap of faith and say, I can do this. And I might not know everything, but I'm going to try it. And I told her, what's the worst that can happen? Apply for the job. It's there. And if you don't make it, what's the worst that can happen? You get the knowledge of the process. You understand what interview questions are you will have to study for the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And so after some talks, she decided to put her name in the hat, and the rest is history. She was promoted to supervisor in a short amount of time that she had been in that call center. And I have to say, she was amazing. She had a lot, she had over 25 staff under her leadership.
Oh,
And she thought she couldn't do it. She proved to herself, I can do this. I don't know
wow.
why I thought I couldn't. And along the way, it was so important that I was there to support her. I have to say she was doing amazing in her job as a supervisor. She was directly under my leadership. I wanted her to continue to grow, but I can see that there were still some insecurities that were kind of bringing her down at times. And I wanted to get to the bottom of that. And at this point, I didn't know a lot of personal things about her, but she was one of the people I started taking walks with. I said, you're working so hard. It was during the pandemic. I said, this is crazy. You can't sit in your office all day. Let's get out of here. Let's go for a walk and let's just go take some, fresh air. In those walks, I learned that she was struggling financially. She had insecurities about her financial situation. She did share with me that she had gotten divorced, and when she was married, she was a stay-at-home mom. She hadn't been saving up. She hadn't been saving up for retirement. So when she got divorced, she's starting from scratch. So that told me, okay, so she has a lot of worries and struggles outside of her profession. And if there's something that I can do to help her, that's going to help her be better at work. Because one of the things they tell us is at work, leave your personal issues at home. How often have you guys heard that? Leave your personal issues at home. Don't
Uh,
bring them to work. And so I couldn't do that to her. I said, let's talk. I want to understand you more. And I did tell her I don't believe in the leave your issues at home, or I have an open door policy, but I really don't want to know. Because how can you have an open door policy? All companies tell you that. I have an open door policy, come on in. But that doesn't mean much if you're not actually building connections and taking the time to talk to your staff. And so I said, who says you cannot start from scratch? Well, I'm in my 50s, is what she said. I said, that doesn't matter. You can be in your 50s, 60s. Who says we cannot start from scratch? Who says you cannot build up to pay your debt off? Who says you can't move into a nicer home? Because she didn't really care at that time where she lived. She didn't really like the neighborhood for safety reasons. And so I said, who says you can't? I say, you proved to yourself that you can become a supervisor when you thought months ago you couldn't do this. So what's going to prevent you now that you have more income? Guess what? Let's work on some plans. Let's take some baby steps. I study a lot of like how to pay debt and things like that. So I had the ability to help her in that. I said, okay, so I'm going to ask you to work on something and then we'll catch up. And I said, try to pay the smallest bill right now. She did. And then I said, okay, let's work backwards now. Let's try to pay the biggest debt from top to bottom. And in the weeks that we continue to talk, she paid all her debt off. All of her debt off. In our last conversations, so she started building into retirement. I said, if you put this much in percentage wise, they'll match the percentage. So she started building into retirement. And I said, who says you couldn't build into retirement? If you have faith in yourself and you believe and you have the courage to face the unknown, who's going to hold you back? Nobody but yourself. So the last accomplishment that she had shared with me was, guess what? I'm buying furniture now. I moved to a nicer side of town. These worries that she had were made up stories we as a society make up in our minds that we're taught. If you're 50 and you're divorced, there's no hope for you. If you have never put into retirement, if you have debt, there's no hope for you. If you don't have special leadership skills, you can never be a supervisor. So in that, we learn those are just stories we make up. But if we have courage and we believe in ourselves and you have somebody to support you and say, hey, you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can on your own and you make mistakes, we'll figure it out together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say she accomplished a lot. And one day she shows up to work when we started having these conversations. And I said, why do you look nicer than me? Your makeup is all done. Your hair is all nice. Your clothes is all looking nice. You know, she had her accessories, her makeup and everything. So it showed me that those insecurities were slowly dissuading.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, and so I didn't know that side of the stories that you mentioned in the beginning. But I started seeing it. I started seeing her care about her appearance. In the beginning, it was very simplistic, but after that, I started to notice she was putting more time and effort. And I didn't know the impact I had on her until you shared your story with me.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I didn't know all of that about that job. All I knew is that she was a different person under your leadership, under your mentorship. So understanding that, thank you for sharing so much about that story. That just really gives me a whole new perspective of that situation and also the impact that we can have as leaders, like literally change somebody's life. So I want to ask you, because a lot of leaders feel like a lot of leaders say that's a bunch of woo woo, like caring about somebody and getting into their personal life. And how do you get anything done? Like, how do you get performance out of your people if you're just talking to them about their personal lives all the time? What would you say to leaders that have that perspective?
I would say that it can be done. I know it can be done because I had over 40 people. At one point, it was up to 60 folks over time. As I mentioned earlier, realistically, you cannot make close connections with all of the 60 folks, like in my situation, but you have to be strategic in that sense of how you build those connections. It can happen, but I would say you focus on the people that are directly under your charge, because those are the people that once you show them that you care about them, that you support them, and you show them that they can succeed in their responsibilities, when you model by example, they're going to reciprocate with their staff. And those staff are going to reciprocate with the customers. So you're indirectly impacting each level of customer service. So the manager, the supervisors, the line staff, the customers. So you can make it happen, building those close connections with the people that are directly under your charge. And I know that sometimes, like in my experience, I have heard where leaders have said, if I build close connections with people, if I show empathy and compassion, that's going to make me look like I'm a weak leader, like I'm a pushover, or there's favoritism, or they're not going to trust me or respect me because I'm not in a command and control leadership style. I know that that probably goes way back. I don't even know, years and years and years, because in the 20 years of work experience that I have always heard that.
Way back.
Right, right. And so it's like, where does this come from? And obviously, it's the wrong approach that we use as leaders in the workplace, because we have seen it never works. There's high turnover rates. You have to continuously hire, and the morale is poor. You see people that are not happy, but they won't go to talk to you because they don't trust you. Because as a leader, they tell you, you build relationships. They don't tell you how, but that they know enough to say build relationships. So it's your job to show your people you care about them, to build them up for success, because isn't that why you're a manager? Because you want to meet the organizational goals. How will you meet organizational goals when you don't care about the people that actually do the work? How are you going to ever get results like that? It doesn't work that way. And you can sit in your office all day long and hand out reports and say, here's the goals. But if you're not out there talking and mentoring and helping people grow, how are you going to be in tune with your people? How are you going to know what their needs are? How are you going to know what the atmosphere feels like? And you lose those people along the way. Just like when you have any relationships outside of work, if you don't work on those relationships, they start to fade away. You don't have any connection. You don't build trust. You don't build a safe environment. So yes, it's your job to build relationships. It's our job to make time for them. And I know this is possible because the areas of responsibilities I had as a manager, they were all customer service. For example, it was reception. It was the call center. It was the folks interviewing our customers. And so it was busy. I had a lot of reports to do. I had a lot of things I had to do. I had a lot of people I answered to. I had to work along with others. But if I was able to make time for my people, then anybody can. If I had close to 60 people under my leadership and I made time for my people, there's no excuse for anybody. And I'm not somebody that likes to boast on performance, but my bosses knew they can count on me, that we would accomplish performance goals. Maybe not everything, because life is not perfect, and you're going to have those situations where you're not always meeting performance. At the end of the day, is it sustainable? Is this team consistently meeting them? You're going to have some outliers where you don't for whatever reason, like the pandemic. So it's okay not to always meet performance, but if you consistently and sustainably meet them, then I know we were meeting performance, but I also know I was investing in my people. And because I was investing in my people, that in return was how you meet performance. So it is your job. It's not about, oh, I'm going to be empathetic or I'm going to be a weak leader if I show people that I'm vulnerable or I care about them. Because as human beings, that's what we should be doing as a society. Oftentimes, it surprises me that, for instance, if we have a natural disaster, we hear in the news all the time, the community gather around. You don't stop and say, oh, is this a president or a CEO or a leader of someplace? Oh, God forbid you go and help the people in crisis. No, you gather as a community and you go and help the people in crisis. It's the same thing in the workplace. You gather as leaders and you help your people because it's the right thing to do. It's about humanity. So when we talk about workplace and it's soft and this and that, no, it's just about humanity, doing what's right for the people that work with you.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness.
We talk about, people come together in crisis. Why should it take a crisis to cause us to do the right thing every day? You said something early on that I just really, really want to come back to. And that is that you told her she had a lot of insecurities in encouraging her to apply for the leadership role. You said, I believe in you. We all have insecurities, right? We all have self-doubt that creeps in. And those simple words of I believe in you, then combined with some real proactive coaching makes a huge difference. I mean, we could all internalize that and think about how we feel if somebody says, I believe in you.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of the other stuff that we're dealing with fades away. Our
Mhm.
confidence is boosted. And that
Mhm.
to me just showed that she just followed suit with that. She needed to hear somebody believed in her.
Mhm.
As leaders, don't we want that for all of the people that we work with? Is for them
Mhm.
to believe, you know, that we know that they're capable, and if we know that they're capable, they
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so wow, there's so many things that you talked about that are so in alignment with the Heart Profit creeds and what our standard of leadership that we hold. And a couple of them that just come right to mind right away is that you created it's people over profits, but we don't have to sacrifice profits. Like we can have both. We can have performance and we can have compassion and care and do what's right for the humans. Then building that psychological safety. Like I know you have insecurities, but I also know we'll figure it out. And I've seen in you is enough to know that we'll figure it out and that you will learn as you go along. And then investing, like that's even above and beyond, like investing that time and getting to know your leaders. Like you really prioritized connection and trust and that responsibility and that accountability that you held yourself to, that created that psychological safety where people can come along and come into who they truly are and come into the full potential of who they are. We don't get a lot of that in the world today. In the society that we live in, the system is not set up for psychological safety and for investing in your people and really understanding those things. So I've got so many emotions going on inside of me throughout this conversation. Um, you know, both from a personal perspective of just thank you for being that for my sister and for making such a big impact in her life. And thank you for being the example of the kind of leader that will change the world, that will absolutely change the world. You talk about people coming together in a crisis. We're in a crisis. We're in a mental health crisis. And we got to come together. And leaders, if you don't hear anything today, I want you to hear the impact, the absolute impact that you can have on someone's life. And that's reciprocated, right? Because when they come into their potential, then they're bringing all of that to the workplace. They're bringing all of that to the business. And so you're compounding human potential by stepping back and investing that time to connect. And it does take time. And it takes time away from the busy work of, I've got to do all these reports. I've got to do these things. I've got to accomplish these tasks. But what you're saying is when you value connection and you create intention around creating that connection, you get the other things get done. You do get them done. And you have so much more sustainable performance, sustainable, ongoing positivity in the workplace that overcomes all of that investment that you make up front. Wow. There's so many. Did I miss
Absolutely.
any, Gloria? Did I miss any?
No, I mean, honestly, when you're talking at even the 10 creeds, I had to go pull this sheet and I'm like, I honestly think Griselda's got all 10.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Yes, it hasn't even been through the certification process. So, wow, that's just, but it goes to show that when we're leading from the heart, things naturally progress. And
Yeah.
so that what I heard Griselda say is I went with my heart. I went with what was right for humanity, what was right for humans in my heart. I disregarded the advice that wasn't feeling good in my heart. And I went with that. She didn't abandon her thoughts. She didn't abandon the smart part. She combined both. So I would like to invite Griselda back for a future conversation that we can continue an ongoing dialect and dialogue with you about what it means to embody being a heart-led leader and what that looks like, and how do we overcome the part that we don't know how to do that. Like you said, a lot of people feel like bringing your heart to work is leading with weakness. And so I'd just like to continue this conversation. If you would continue to be with us on this, I think you would be our honorary guest on a regular basis. I think we could really benefit from this. So thank you so much for being a part of this important conversation. It's timely, it's important. We have to change the way we're doing things. We have to change the way we're leading people. We have to change the way we're doing business. And this is exactly the start of what that change looks like. So thank you, Griselda, for giving us examples and for being a shining example of what it looks like to be a heart-led leader that also has performance and connection with their people. And you do not feel at all like a weak leader to me. There's nothing that I sat here and thought, oh, well, that's weak. You
Pushover, not.
powerful. It's quiet power, right? It's that quiet power that just is, and you embody that so much. So I'm so thankful that our paths have crossed, and I look forward to unpacking more of this heart-based leadership and the future of business with you as we go on this journey together. So again, if you're new to this and this resonates with you and you want to find out more information, you can go to heartprofit.org, look at our website. We have a whole training program pathway for leaders to transform you into the new style of leader that our world desperately needs. Okay, we love you guys. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next episode.